I feel sometimes like people are going to think I'm a weirdo if I pull earplugs out of my purse, but who cares? Because I feel better if I don't have to listen to all that loud noise all day, you know? So taking those little moments to integrate those tiny self-care things into your day, like the earplugs or carrying a water bottle or always having a lip balm in your coat pocket or whatever, I think those things are super important, and they all contribute to setting up an environment that supports you in achieving your goals.
Welcome to Migraine Again, helping you eat, breathe, survive, thrive, and engage better despite migraine. If you or someone you know struggles with migraine often, join us for today's insightful conversation. Now here's your host, founder and managing editor of MigraineAgain.com and co-host of the Migraine World Summit, Paula Dumas.
Bad habits. We all have them. It takes a lot of discipline to behave well, and how much fun is that? Remember, migraine is not your fault. Yet when it comes to migraine, you can do everything your doctor tells you to do and still fail repeatedly to get better. So what can you do? If you've got one bad habit that you'd really like to swap out with a healthier habit, today's guest can help. She is a smart and sassy chronic babe who literally wrote the book on living as well as possible, despite frequent pain. We'll be back to chat with her right after this.
Lost your train of thought again? Lost an opportunity at work? Lost the chance to attend a special event? Navigating a life with migraine isn't easy. Frequent attacks can make it tough to think, to work, and even to show up. Find the help you need just one click away at migraineworldsummit.com. Each year, watch dozens of leading experts, including top patient advocates and headache specialists from the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, UCLA, and King's College London. Get an all-access pass to watch it anytime, anywhere, on demand at migraineworldsummit.com. Stop losing out and get back the life you deserve. You'll be glad you did. You're listening to Migraine Again. For show notes and resources from this episode, check out our program page on migraineagain.com. And now, once again, here's your host, Paula Dumas.
Jenni Grover is the creator of an online community for chronic babes and chronic dudes with health issues who strive to lead positive, amazing, fulfilling lives. As a chronic babe herself, Jenni inspires a new confidence in her readers and helps them to craft a more fabulous life with chronic illness. Jenni is a frequent speaker who appeared on the 2017 Migraine World Summit, and she's also the author of Chronic Babe 101, How to Craft an Incredible Life Beyond Illness, and founder of chronicbabe.com. Jenni, welcome to Migraine Again.
Paula, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you and your audience today.
Wonderful. Well, my family and friends can tell you I've got some bad habits.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. And some of those habits can make migraine attacks worse, even though they don't cause migraine. And a few of them I wasn't even aware of until I did more research and discovered some of my own self-defeating behaviors. So I think it's essential that we're at least aware of some of the habits that might be undermining the way we feel, the way we want to feel. So,
yeah, sure.
Jenni, help us understand why you believe people form bad habits in the first place.
Sure. Well, I think that some of it starts with upbringing. We're raised in households taught different values and different approaches to life. So, for example, in my household, donuts were the thing. We always had donuts. It was a Saturday morning, we were driving to Shipley's to get a big old box of donuts for everybody to eat, and emotional eating was just something that we did. So for me, I still continue to work on emotional eating, i.e. not doing it if I can help it, and that is a really hard habit to break because I had, 18 years of it to start with. So I think our background, things like that, whether it's our immediate family or extended family, whether it's friends or maybe it's our school environment, we learn some bad habits when we're kids that can be really tough to shake because they're so foundational. I think also speaking to that emotional eating, I think some of our bad habits can be very self-soothing, maybe not in the long term. Like you said, you may realize later that in the long run they're really harming you or maybe exacerbating your symptoms. But some of them we use as self-soothing behavior. So some people may feel like they really enjoy watching a comforting TV show at night before they go to bed, but then they later learn that having the TV on that late at night stimulates their mind and actually keeps them from falling to sleep at a regular time. So, some of those habits we may feel like we have an emotional soothing we need or a physical soothing, and the habit might feel good in the moment, but just isn't great for us in the long term. And, related to that, I think is the people we surround ourselves with. So, for a long time I surrounded myself with friends. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say it, but friends who were pretty judgy and pretty short-sighted about some things. It's like in my very early years, and it wasn't a thing that I did intentionally, but when I started to realize that I was doing it, I realized I was judging people and really judging myself quite harshly. So when I first got sick and got diagnosed, which is more than 20 years ago, with fibromyalgia and asthma and anxiety and a bunch of other things, I was hanging out with a lot of people who were pretty judgy, and I was kind of judging myself pretty harshly and really beating myself up for not being able to find a cure or not being able to find a fix or exacerbating my symptoms. And the more and more I phased those people out of my life that were very judgmental, the less judgmental I became, and I'd learned better habits about how I could speak to myself and definitely how I speak about others, and that has been a really good positive habit to learn. But I had to first kind of unlearn it.
Right. Judgment is contagious, but so is grace.
Oh, that's so true.
So let's have a grace-filled space.
I love it, yes. I always try to approach things with a real spirit of compassion and try to understand everybody's coming to this chronic illness or chronic pain life from different places. We all bring our own baggage and history, and the more we can make room for each other to not focus on self-doubt or self-blame, but focus instead on how can we work together to learn new ways to take care of ourselves. That's always my focus.
Sounds like a good focus. Some of my own habits, this is the confession part, that I discovered were a problem for migraine were things like sleeping in on weekends, drinking too much soda or tea, and then slacking off on exercise. What do you consider to be some of the more risky habits for people with frequent pain?
Oh, Paula, I have definitely done all those myself, too. And I think that all three of those are really pertinent for people with any kind of chronic pain condition. I think hydrating is so important, and we often blow off drinking water, and we instead reach for soda or tea or coffee or whatever it is, whether it's caffeinated or if it's just like a sugary beverage. That can be so bad for our bodies. They can be very inflammatory, and being dehydrated can really increase pain. So really not drinking enough water is a big one for me. Not getting enough movement. So you mentioned exercise. I think also just movement throughout the day. So, we work in a culture in North America anyway, where sitting at your desk all day is kind of the norm for a lot of us. And whether you're working from home or working in an office, or maybe you're not working, but you're sitting on your couch or you're in your recliner at home, not getting up frequently and moving and changing positions really causes and exacerbates pain, or can. So I've learned that I have to move around a lot. I use a timer on my computer that goes off every 20 minutes that forces me to take a 2-minute break. So that's great for my hands, great for my body. I use a sit-stand desk. So that movement throughout the day is really important. I also think that we can fall into a habit of thinking that the same things that help our pain in the beginning and around diagnosis are the same things that will always help. And we forget to explore other avenues. So we fall into this habit of maybe relying on a medication or relying on cortisone shots or whatever it is. I don't mean to critique any of those choices, but when we rely on the same things that have helped us in the past and we close our minds to other kinds of approaches, we can be really missing out. And it's easy to fall into that habit of just, doing that one thing and forgetting that there's other options.
That's true. I would always, whenever I would feel pressure in my head, the younger Paula would reach for a Diet Coke.
Oh, yeah, right.
And because it didn't seem like anything else would help relieve that pressure that was not in a pill form, right? Of some kind.
I had migraines for a very long time when I was younger on a very regular basis, and that was always my go-to as well. And I learned that there are other things I can do with breathing and meditation or peppermint oil, or like there's all these different things I can do in the moment that really actually give me a lot of relief and can stop a migraine attack in its tracks. But our bodies are all different, right? For some people, one thing might work or not work, and so I never try to tell people what to do specifically, but definitely to just keep their minds open to changing it up. So I'm glad you changed it up and found better things that work for you.
That is true. That is true. What's been your biggest benefit from practicing good habits?
I think there's two that are really powerful for me. One is that I know that my pain is so much better managed. Mm-hmm. So that right there is a huge win for me. Having better habits with exercise, wearing better shoes, making better choices about how I pace my day, all diet, hydration, all those things, they help me manage my pain much better. Mm-hmm. And that means that I can work. That means I can run a company that helps people. It means I can be a good auntie, all those things I want to do. And tied directly to that is really that my sense of self-esteem has expanded enormously, because when I was first sick and first hurting, I would try all these things and they wouldn't work. And I still had a bunch of bad habits that were exacerbating things, and I didn't realize it. And I felt really bad about myself because I felt like I should be able to fix this. And it didn't happen. So I think that being able to manage my pain is incredible and clearly like my top priority in so many ways in my life. But then that self-esteem that comes with knowing that I am actually doing what I can and that it's helping is really, really enormous.
Yeah, you're right. It's underrated. How we feel about ourselves has a lot to do with how we feel physically.
Oh, yeah,
there's a connection. Sure. Yeah. So a habit is a hard thing to build. I can focus on choices. What's required to turn good choices into actual habits?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a great question, because it can take a long time for people to turn those good choices into habits. There's lots of numbers floating around about how many days it takes to repeat until it's a really habit. And I think that experts are not in agreement on what that number is. So I never tell people, do it for this many days and you're good. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that's really helped me in the past is having accountability. So that might be accountability to my husband. For example, we like to go to the gym together. And so when I skip a few days, it is totally his prerogative to say to me, hey, it'd be really fun if you were at the gym with me today. And, we can kind of joke about it, and he can lovingly kind of nudge me back into the, healthier path. Mm-hmm. So it could be your spouse or your partner or family member. That could be a group. Like I formed a personal ultra secret group for only my close friends on Facebook where we talk about emotional eating and healthy eating. And that's been really helpful, because when I struggle, I can talk to them and we can share with each other what's working for us or what challenges we're facing. And I can ask them for accountability. I can ask them to say, hey, to ask me tomorrow how I did. Did I eat a donut? And they'll do it, I also think setting yourself up for success in your surroundings is important. So sometimes we make those choices, we may choose to eat a certain way, but if we're living with someone who's not going to eat that way and they fill your house with food that you don't want to have, you've got to have that conversation with them and talk about why you're making this choice and how they can support you and how it's going to help you and them if you can make this choice into a habit. So surrounding yourself with people and with things that you need to turn those choices into good habits is so essential. And then the last thing I think it's super important is to remember that progress is not linear. So when you are working on turning it into a habit, if you do something for 7 days and on the 8th day you skip it, you can't beat yourself up about it and decide that you've failed. You got to say, okay, I skipped a day.
Celebrate the 7 days of success and let the 8th day go.
That's right. Focus on that, or whatever the goal is that you have, but remembering that there are always going to be ups and downs. We're not moving in a straight line upward forever. It's a roller coaster. So we need to be willing to ride it a little bit. And even when the roller coaster starts to go down, if we can throw our hands in the air and try to squeal with joy a little bit, which is not so easy, but accepting that that's part of the deal,
Yeah, makes sense. Well, you're listening to Migraine Again, and our guest is Jenni Grover, author of Chronic Babe 101, How to Craft an Incredible Life Beyond Illness. And we'll have more ways to empower yourself to ditch bad habits and live more fabulously when we return.
A hot new series is out that you're going to want to binge watch with a bag of popcorn in a dark room. A medical drama with intriguing characters waging gritty, complex battles. Critics call it riveting and insightful. A true original you won't find anywhere else. It's the Migraine World Summit. With dozens of new episodes each season, just one click away. Watch world-leading experts from the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, and UCLA from the comfort of your couch. Get an all-access pass to watch it anytime, anywhere, on demand at migraineworldsummit.com. So put on your comfy pajamas and prepare to binge. You'll be glad you did. This is Migraine Again, encouraging and empowering you in your battle against migraine because you deserve to feel better. You can hear this conversation again or share it with someone who might like to hear it by going to migraineagain.com. And now, once again, here's Paula.
We're back with Jenni Grover talking about breaking bad habits and ways to bounce back from the occasional setbacks. So, Jenni, how do you handle failure despite our best intentions?
Oh, well, first, I struggle with that word. I sometimes use it toward myself in a way that's not very loving or supportive. So when I start to think about having a failure, I try to think about, can I reframe this? Can I be realistic and reframe this? So sometimes we might tell ourselves if we have a flare-up or a new symptom or if we skip a day of exercise or whatever, we might decide that it's a failure. And I try first to reframe it and say, well, that was a choice I made, or something happened that blocked my path yesterday from my good habits, so I'm going to try again today. So I really try to reframe whenever I can, because I think that failure can be such a loaded word for people, and I know that is true for me. It can really feel very upsetting. That accountability I was talking about earlier, I think really helps. So I mentioned my super secret Facebook group. I made that group. No one can see who's in it. No one can see what we talk about, and so I feel safe saying in there.
Except
hey,
Facebook.
Guys,
Facebook can see what you're talking about.
But I mean, it's but it's secret, right? It's still on Facebook, and people can still screenshot things, and we need to be thoughtful about that. But the people who are in the group, I trust very, very much. And so I feel okay saying on there, hey, guys, I screwed up. I ate the donut. I'm bummed about it. And they will say to me, okay, well, that was a choice you made, and now you can make a different choice today, or words to that effect, So having that accountability is really helpful. I mentioned earlier the progress is not linear. I actually keep a postcard that says that up in my office because I need a daily reminder sometimes that we're on a path that is not linear, that can go up or down, and it doesn't mean I've failed if I don't accomplish my goal or make the choice that I want to on a certain day. Sometimes it's important to let yourself mourn a little bit because, if you... let's put it this way. I worked out almost every day for 6 months in a row, and then I threw my back out, and I got an upper respiratory infection. So I missed a month of working out, and now I'm trying to get back into my rhythm, but because I have chronic pain and fibromyalgia, I can't just jump right back into the gym. I have to start really slow again and slowly move through it. And while I am very upbeat and I might take funny selfies at the gym and I'll listen to pop music and lift myself up, I also sometimes feel a little bit sad that I'm not where I want to be, and letting yourself feel that emotion, not wallowing it, but saying yeah, you know what, it's okay. I have a right to be sad a little bit about this. It's a bummer. Moving through it and living that emotion and letting it be, and it frees you up to then move through it and go on to back to okay, well, what am I going to do now to get back to where I want to be? So I think sometimes we can get caught up in okay, wait, how do I fix this? And sometimes we have to really take a pause and say, okay, you know what? I'm allowed to feel bad about this for a minute. And then move through it. And maybe talk to your accountability buddy or your spouse or whoever is kind of helping you with this stuff. Maybe it's your therapist. Maybe it's your doctor. There's so many people who could fill that role. And I also think it's important to try to identify what caused that bump in the road. So for me, the workout, it's very obvious. I threw my back out and I got an upper respiratory bug. And it's pretty clear that's what happened. But other times I've had really good rhythm and a really good habit about, let's say, having a green smoothie every day, and then I have like some really big, terrible emotional thing happen, and I ate a burger instead. Well, I can own up to that the next day and go, wow, I really was upset, and I self-soothed with a burger or whatever. That's a choice I made. I'm not going to make that choice today. I'm going to have a green smoothie. And looking at that, evaluating what happened, what can I do? And again, it comes back to that self-esteem. When you're able to look at that and say, okay, I made a bad choice, or I made a choice I don't love, I'm going to make a different choice today, that can really lift your sense of self-worth and esteem when you realize that you have the ability to make healthy choices for yourself and to build those habits. And so there's an opportunity there to turn things around pretty quickly if we give ourselves permission.
And, making healthy choices can be fun, too. It's not like discipline is all negative, especially the fun that you have when you make a series of healthy choices and then you feel much better physically, and then you get to go have more fun. So there's a direct line. Like working out is not as much fun as I wish it would be, but, it allows me to get to where I want to be. So
yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I get to once a week when I'm able to, I go dance with a friend and some other ladies, and it's just for an hour, and it's this little Chicago dance party thing for women only, and it's really silly and fun. I can't always do it, but years of working on my health have allowed me to be able to do it sometimes, and that is a blast, and it's worth every minute of work to be able to do that fun hour of dancing.
Yeah, that's a goal, almost like a picture to have in mind. It is, what is your fun moment that you really want to be able to do? And then what do your healthy choices, how does it allow you to get one step closer to that really fun thing that you want to do?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So we talked about having really positive people in your life. Let's say you have someone in your life who might not intend to be a bad influence, but actually is. Like a friend who loves pizza or Chinese food, and that might be off limits for you, or not in the current diet that you're following, or, kind of pressures you to drink more or stay up later than you can handle. How do you respond to that?
Oh, that's a really good question. I was just talking with a friend about that this weekend. So I'm very lucky that we have all these friends who wanted to invite us to things, and a friend texted me and said, come out with us, we're going to go out for drinks. And I texted back and said, I love you, I really want to hang out with you, and now is not the best time for me, and drinking right now is not the best idea for me. I'm having a pain flare-up, and that's going to aggravate it. So I hope you can understand I have to be a maybe for tonight, and I'm definitely going to be our designated driver. And, and I made some jokes in there. There were like inside jokes and stuff. And so I used a little bit of self-deprecating humor, but I also was just totally straight with her about what I needed and why. And not just like, no, I can't do that. And I also wasn't like, I have chronic pain. Why would you invite me to do that? Or what? I actually, I honored her request. I said, thank you. I recognized the connection we have. I told her that I loved her. And then I said very clearly and very specifically, this is what I'm able to do or not able to do, or I have to be a maybe. And I sent that text and wasn't totally sure how her response would be, and she texted back and said, I don't usually say this to people, but I really respect how you handle your social engagements, because I think a lot of us say yes to things sometimes that we aren't really good for us because we feel a sense of obligation. So I appreciate you just being real with me. Yeah. And it's like, maybe if we're just real with people. So that can go for like, if you have a friend and they want to go out for pizza and you don't want to eat pizza, you gotta, kind of suck it up a little bit and say to them, like, hey, I love you, and I need to go to a place where I can have salad,
Yep. We forget, like we have, with some friends, you can do one thing. Other friends, you can do other things. Yeah. I have a family member who has Lyme disease, a really acute case of Lyme disease, and he is not able to eat the same places that the rest of us can. And I kick myself every time I invite him and we say, well, let's get together and have dinner, and how about such and such restaurant? And I'm thinking, no, I know he can only go to, these two restaurants to find something that's good on his menu where he can trust the kitchen.
Sure.
So it's being flexible.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the kind of thing where, like, you could make a list for yourself. Like, I use Evernote on my phone. It's an app that can sync across your laptop and your phone and everything. And I have a bunch of shared lists with friends and with my husband, and so they can access them. And I have lists like that include, like, here are restaurants that I can go to with a friend who's gluten-free or whatever. And by making those tools be like just setting that intention and maybe even only spending like 10 minutes on it and talking it through with that other person, like, we're supporting them, we're helping them make healthier choices. And when we initiate that kind of stuff about the choices that we need, so for example, when I was gluten-free for many years, and I would go to dinner with people, and I would always, when people would ask me to dinner, I would always reply and include recommendations for a couple places we could go. You know, because I feel like it's not like it's my responsibility to lead the whole conversation or plan the whole thing, but if I come to the table with some helpful information and meet them part way, hopefully they learn to do the same thing. But it's like we all have to kind of, you know, quietly agree that we're going to do that for each other. So that can be a hard habit to get into, but it's really worth it.
It is. And friends support friends. And if they don't support you, then they're not your friend.
Yeah, and sometimes people make mistakes, too, and that's okay. Like, we can't expect people to be perfect, and we definitely can't expect, you know, like, I wouldn't expect you to remember all my dietary needs every time we go out. Like, I think it's different when it's, like, your mom, right, or your best friend, like someone who's known for 20 years that you're a vegetarian, for example, and they're like, let's go to that place that's the all-you-can-eat steaks. Like, okay, you're pushing it now, you know?
Right. So we talked a little bit earlier about environment. You know, people with migraine cannot afford to procrastinate because you never know when an attack is going to hit. And I assume the same is true with a lot of chronic disorders.
Yeah, very true.
So many of us can't easily tolerate prolonged exposure to fluorescent light, for example, pungent perfumes, deafening noise. How do you set up your environment and your schedule to win?
Well, working for myself was key. So I've been working for myself for 15 years, and leaving an office job gave me relief from so many things. Those fluorescent lights, the non-ergonomically correct workspace. So in my home, the most expensive piece of furniture I have is my office chair, because I spend a lot of time in it, and it could be the source of a lot of additional pain if I'm not careful. So I've invested as much as I can in my own office space where I work, and I've worked with an occupational therapist to make sure that it's ergonomically serving me. And actually, I've done the same thing with my car. She's even taught me how to, like, fold laundry and move my body for all these different household tasks so I can be healthy. So I think that's really important, is to value yourself and recognize, like, these are areas of potential concern or that might be aggravating me. I need to invest in myself, and that might mean financially invest, like buying an expensive office chair, or even research on finding a cheap but really good quality office chair on Craigslist, you know. So I think really embracing that and respecting your needs. And when you start to do that and you assert those needs with other people, I think that they often follow suit. For me, also, a big amount of flexibility is really important. So I don't juggle 20 clients at a time. I usually have like 3 or 4, because having too many really causes me a lot of anxiety, which is one of the conditions I live with. So I'm really careful about that. So I'm really choosy about who I work with, because I can really only juggle a couple clients at the same time as I do all my chronic babe work. So again, understanding your needs and being able to set good boundaries with people. So I think that's really important, because sometimes people will just kind of insist that we work together, and I have to say no, which is difficult. And then, like, really, flexibility, I think, is really important. So I also have times where, like, procrastination does not serve me, and so I do try to stay up to speed on everything as much as possible, but also having flexibility. So, for example, I'm working on a client project right now where all 3 of us, we have to do these phone calls. We're all over the country, and all 3 of us have different chronic conditions, and so sometimes we have to reschedule those calls, and I think some people in that situation would get frustrated at how often we've had to reschedule. But the 3 of us have agreed to be flexible with each other, because we know that it's worth it to get the outcome that we want, which is a really great work product, right? So that flexibility with ourselves and with others is really important. And then finally, like, there's a couple small things I do. Like, I carry earplugs with me everywhere I go because I'm very sound sensitive and I live in a big city. So sometimes even just like riding the bus is super noisy for me. So I've started to do things like, and I feel sometimes like people are going to think I'm a weirdo if I pull earplugs out of my purse, but who cares? Because I feel better if I don't have to listen to all that loud noise all day, you know? So taking those little moments to integrate those tiny self-care things into your day, like the earplugs or carrying a water bottle or always having a lip balm in your coat pocket or whatever, I think those things are super important, and they all contribute to setting up an environment that supports you in achieving your goals.
Mm-hmm. And one of the best points that you made, I'd like to reiterate, which is just the ability to say no, to set your boundaries, to know what it is that you need so that you have margin in your life and you're not pushed against deadlines that elevate your anxiety or are going to set you back if you are surprised by an attack.
That's right. That's right. And I think, you know, it's tough because people will push back. And if you're someone who's said yes to almost everybody your whole life, when you start setting boundaries and saying no to things, it can be very, like, distressing for other people because they're used to you being a very accommodating person. And so I think that's a good area to perhaps work with a professional to get some ideas on that. Like, I have a fantastic therapist. I've learned a lot about boundaries from her. Mm-hmm. There's a whole chapter on it in my book because I think it's super important. And I've read a bunch of other good books just all about setting boundaries because I firmly believe that boundaries really serve us. When we are able to say no to the things that don't serve us, we're not just saying no and closing out the world. We're making space for what does serve us.
Right, right. So we're giving ourselves breathing room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It's really important. So we talked about relationships and the tricky part when some people have chronic illness and some people don't. Sometimes a simple question like, how are you, feels like a really difficult question to answer honestly without being a Debbie Downer. How do you maintain positivity and self-confidence when people don't believe that you're in the kind of pain that you're in?
Yeah, and there are those naysayers, those people who, 20 years later still will look at me and say, but you look so bubbly and your hair's so cute and you seem fine. And it's like, okay, thanks for invalidating 20 years of experience. But, I started saying this thing, AWAP, and I have a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel that are called AWAP Wednesday. And AWAP stands for as well as possible. And I've started to use it a few years ago as my sign-off on my email or my greeting in my emails because I found that I was sending emails to people in our community who have chronic pain or migraine or chronic illness, and I would start with, hi, how are you? And then it's like, well, or I'd say, hi, I hope you're well. And it's like, but they're not well. I mean, they're as well as possible. So I started thinking about this phrase and how I could integrate it throughout my life and all my greetings and salutations, because when people ask me, how are you, it's such a complicated answer. And a lot of times saying, I'm as well as possible is a really just clear answer. It's not, I'm great, which is probably a lie sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's also not, well, my foot hurts and I have cramps and I have a headache and my digestion's a little bit off and blah, you know what I mean? Because we can really overload people with all that stuff and it doesn't serve us or them. So I've started answering, I'm as well as possible, or I come up with all these different answers like, same day, different channel, or it's like just trying to come up with kind of self-effacing, kind of humor-focused responses sometimes really helps kind of lighten the mood, even on those days when I feel really terrible. It sometimes like jolts me into at least faking it till I make it.
Right.
I think that when people don't believe us, it can come from a bunch of different places. I think that sometimes people just, if they haven't experienced it, there's no way for them to understand how hard it is. And so it can be difficult for them to understand what it means that the pain that they may have once every 3 or 4 months for a day is a thing you live with every single day. Like, there are just people who can't comprehend that because they have no point of reference. So I try to keep reminding myself to be compassionate and remember that they're coming from different place than me, and that can keep me from being like angry at them. Mm-hmm. But I often try to use it as a learning tool, too. So if I'm really struggling and someone says, hey, how are you? And it's like an acquaintance or a new friend or somebody like that, or maybe even a client or a project partner, I use it as an opportunity to say, well, there's some good things about today and some bad things about today. I'm going to try to focus on the good, and that's kind of where I am. How are you? Mm-hmm. And, sometimes that takes people by surprise because they're just used to someone answering and saying, well, I'm fine.
Right.
But we need to be real with each other. I know it's very difficult for some people to get vulnerable and be so real with others. I think it really serves us. Mm-hmm. I think it helps us talk through and speak through the experiences we're having. I think it helps us be stronger partners and community members and employees and bosses. I think that it helps us build more authentic and closer relationships with people. So I think it's really important. But I often just go back to AWAP because it really works. But I wanted to tell you that I did create a PDF a while back of like all these different ways to answer the question, how are you? So I will send you the link to that, and you can share that with folks because I would love for people to get that download, and at least they get a few ideas for ways they can try to answer that question differently than just I'm fine,
Fun. Well, we can add that to the show notes. That would be a great thing to do.
Awesome.
So. Awesome. This has been really enlightening and encouraging, I'm sure, for a lot of people and for me personally. So thank you for being a source of empowerment and inspiration for the babes and dudes in our community.
Thank you, Paula. It is really my pleasure. To make something good out of my own kind of crummy experience is so amazing. It's a gift every single day. So thanks.
It is. Thank you. So if you'd like to connect with Jenni, go to chronicbabe.com or follow her on Twitter @chronicbabe. Don't miss her talk on the Migraine World Summit on living as well as possible. And you can also get a copy of her new book, Chronic Babe 101, through a link in the show notes on migraineagain.com. And we've got more for you coming up. But first, if you've really enjoyed this show so far, can I ask you a favor? We really value your feedback and reviews. And if you could just take a minute to give us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, I would personally appreciate it. It helps us do more quality programs like this one. And next, we'll return with the listener question of the day on dealing with a difficult boss.
A thief is on the loose, breaking into 1 billion homes around the world like yours. This thief doesn't want your electronics or your jewelry. He wants your work days, your wallet, your relationships, and your most precious moments. On the street, he's known as Migraine. Ever heard of him? Lucky for you, your best defense is one click away at migraineworldsummit.com. Each year, watch dozens of leading experts, including top patient advocates and headache specialists from the Mayo Clinic, Harvard, UCLA, and King's College London. Get an all-access pass to watch it anytime, anywhere, on demand at migraineworldsummit.com. You'll be glad you did. Hey, we'd like to hear about your life with migraine and offer some help and encouragement if we can. If you've got a question about migraine, we'll do our best to answer it and might even include it on one of our upcoming podcasts. If you'd like to submit a question, just go to our website, migraineagain.com/question. And Paula, today we hear from Heather in Michigan, who contacted us through the Migraine Again website, migraineagain.com, and she writes, I get sick a lot, but I don't call in sick from work. In fact, more often than not, I work through my pain. But I've got a really difficult boss who doesn't understand migraine. What's the best way to deal with a difficult boss?
Oh my gosh, Heather, I have been in that movie myself with a difficult boss. I can flash back and imagine the interactions that I had with him. And it was a job that I loved and that I needed at the time, which made it even more painful. So I do understand that. I think that the reason why your boss doesn't understand migraine is because most of the population doesn't understand migraine very well. In fact, it's a highly stigmatized disease. And most people think it's just a bad headache. So the first step in working with a boss is to try to educate them and, share some things that you have learned about migraine that you want for him to know. This is assuming that you've told him that you have migraine. And you can, print off a copy of an article on Migraine Again and slip it on his desk and say, just want you to know what I'm dealing with. For example, we've got a Migraine 101 section with a lot of really good basic articles that may help your boss to understand what you're going through. Or you can share, if he or she is an audio kind of person, you can share this program with them and let them listen and learn a little bit more about what it's like to live with migraine. Because people can't adapt to things that they simply don't understand. And if he has never had migraine or been close to someone who does, chances are he needs to learn more about it. So that would be the first step. Second is kind of turn the negative into a positive. So most people think, well, somebody who is sick a lot is not going to be a reliable employee. And that's a script that I think is a little bit outdated. As you said, you oftentimes work through the pain on days when you have more mild attacks, whenever you're able to do that. And I admire that. That is a pretty common pattern. It's called presenteeism. We're there, but not completely there, but we're still holding down our job. There are some really positive things associated with migraine. Like most of us are incredibly disciplined. We don't procrastinate. We plan ahead. That's a great characteristic for an employee. And we always deliver eventually. We're very good at keeping commitments, not blowing them off. We've mastered the art of coping, for example. We cope with pain every single day, or with high frequency, we can cope with the turbulence that might come in a job. There's actually science that says that between attacks, our brains actually shine. They actually perform even better. So, save your toughest stuff for between the attacks. We have great empathy for other people who are in pain if we know that they're in pain for our teammates, and that builds stronger teams. These are all things that, are not easy to find in the workforce. And we're incredibly resourceful and agile because things come up unpredictably. So just, turn the negative perception into a positive by reminding them about the things that you have because you have been dealt this biological hand of migraine. And then I always encourage people to have a plan of here's how I'm going to manage my attacks and share that plan with their boss. So assuming again that the boss knows about your migraine attacks, say this is all the things that I'm doing to prevent them, and this is what I do when I have an attack. So on the occasion that I'm going to have to leave work because of an attack, just want you to know I will have worked ahead. And I think most bosses respond really positively to that. Now, if you still have a boss who is negative at this point, you can nominate him to the Horrible Bosses Hall of Fame, or you can go to HR, you can go find a new job, or you can say, I'm going to wait this person out. And if they're really that bad, they may not be able to keep their job unless they own the organization that you're working for. And to cope in the meantime, you can watch a funny movie like Horrible Bosses 1 or 2 or 9 to 5, that classic about other people who have horrible bosses, and maybe last through it a little bit longer. So I hope that helps you. Keep us posted on how it's going.
Paula, I have one follow-up. You mentioned, I think, twice in your response that this assumes that the boss knows about migraine. Now, some people are afraid to tell their bosses that they have migraine. So if her boss doesn't know, is this the opportunity that you throw open the door, turn over all the cards and say, I've got migraine, here's what we're dealing with? Or how would you approach that scenario?
That's a great question, and I think it really depends. So it depends on whether you are missing a lot of work and you feel like your job is at risk. So if it is out of control and your job is at risk, then you need to share. If it's not, chances are it will be met with some misunderstanding. If you're easily replaceable and you've been missing a lot of work, you might need to disclose it. If you are not easily replaceable and you have kind of got it under control, but they're just a difficult boss, then I would not share. Because I think there's still a lot of work to be done in culture to educate employers and management on what migraine really is and the value that a lot of people that migraine bring. Like, who would fire Thomas Jefferson? Pretty talented guy, right?
Well, he's a little bit outdated now. He's not up on all of his social media, but aside from that, he might be worth keeping around.
Right. There's some amazingly talented people like John F. Kennedy and Elizabeth Taylor and Whoopi Goldberg and Julius Caesar. You wouldn't fire them just because they had migraine?
Certainly not. Certainly not. Heather, thanks so much for writing in. And by the way, if you'd like to ask your question on an upcoming Migraine Again program, we'd love to hear from you. You can do it through our website, migraineagain.com/questions. And Heather, thanks again. And Paula, thank you.
Thank you, Rich. And I'm Paula Dumas, wishing you a pain-free day.
And that wraps up another episode. We hope that you feel encouraged and empowered in your battle against migraine, because you deserve better. If you want to suffer less and live more despite migraine, be sure to check out all the great resources on migraineagain.com. Follow us on your favorite social network and subscribe to our free newsletter and this program. If you enjoyed today's episode, tell a friend about it, and be sure and join us again next time on Migraine Again. You'll be glad you did.